Welcome back to the Youth Board podcast. Thank you for joining us again. In our third episode, the Youth Board will be focusing on the transition process from Children and Young People Services to Adult Services. We are joined today by Razina Mohammed, who is an educational psychologist. Her work spans between therapy, psychological assessment and training. Razina focuses on supporting children and young people and has a passion for mental health, neurodevelopment and social and educational policy. An interesting thing about Razina is that she has a cat that loves double thick Woolworths yogurt. That is quite specific. We hope you find this episode helpful.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about transitioning from CAM services to adult services. My name is Angel and I'm part of the Youth Board. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Amelia. I'm also part of the Youth Board podcast.
Hi guys, my name is Mustafa. I'm also a part of the Youth Board.
Okay, so our first question is, what is CAMS?
CAMS is a mental health service for adolescents and people under the age of 18.
So it's understandable that the transition from CAMS to adult services are supposed to be smooth, but there are some issues that can arise from that. So have you guys ever experienced anything like that?
Yes. So the main issue that I had experienced was miscommunication, or just lack of communication between the patient and the professionals, and then between the professionals themselves. They would repeat questions, get a few, mistakes.
What about you, Angel? What about you?
Oh, me?
Yeah, what about you, Angel?
So I haven't gone through the
Neither
adult...
have I, Angel. But what
No,
would you,
I
what
know,
would you
I
look to
could...
see?
Okay, we'll get into that.
What would you look to see? What's he do?
Personally, for me, I don't quite understand the whole transition aspect of the adult services.
Right.
I just expect that they respect me and also that they listen to me and they're not talking at me and they're talking with me.
You know what? I agree.
Do you feel as if it hasn't been explained to you because you're turning 18 soon? Do you feel like it hasn't been explained to you? Do you not know what to expect?
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm quite clear on what to exactly kind of gain from adult services. And also my parents don't really understand it too, because the CAM services, even for me, is quite new. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to understand what exactly does it mean to transition from CAM services to the adult services?
That's understandable.
I think just speaking around people that are 18 or older, they've always... I don't know, I think despite how bad CAMS is, everyone that's over the age of 18 always agrees that adults is worse. I remember when I went to go visit one of my friends who were in adult services, I was shocked at how open everything was, I guess. Not space-wise, but usually they search you, the stuff that's coming in and out, that wasn't anywhere to be seen in adults.
Yeah.
And also it's very wide, for inpatient services, I think my friend was 18 and the second youngest person there was 20 something. So there's quite a big gap between ages. Whereas in CAMS, in patients, everyone's around the same age group.
Yeah. I agree. When I was briefly in adult services when I was 17, due to miscommunication, ironically. When I was there, I was the youngest person there, obviously 17. There was an 18-year-old, and then the next patient was 40, and it was also very varied in the levels of care that people needed. There were some people who needed constant watch, and there was other people there who were not as much as at risk. So it was a bit unhealthy. It was a bit stressful environment, and I'd say that it's from what I've heard from my friends who are in the adult services, the care is less personalized, at least if you're in a hospital. That's what I heard, because there's so many people there. It's really hard to get personalized care.
Thank you guys for setting the scene. So the next topic we're going to move on to is lived experiences. Mm-hmm. I understand that you've had some experiences with transitioning.
So my experiences with transitions team was mostly positive. There was a few issues in the beginning of the waiting time and not knowing when I would have available staff because of problems, I suppose. I know that in the beginning it was incredibly stressful. We weren't really sure. Well, they kept asking me on how I would like my care to be. It was very not really. I felt a little bit pressured to know on. So they would ask me where I wanted, what direction I would like to go with my transitions team. So if I wanted to get into education, what kind of my goals and plans. So I know that I was quite fortunate because at the time when I was transitioning, they had a program that was for arts and fashion. So they had something for me to do. So I went to a program, or Hope FX. But I feel like it was very limited of what I could actually do. So it was also a lot of miscommunication between, so nearing the end of my transitions team, where they did move me finally to adult services, there was a very big miscommunication with the person giving me my assessment, where they were assessing if I needed to go into adult services, and then the people who are handling my transition, where the person assessing me thought I said I wanted to be discharged, where everyone who was handling my transition agreed that I shouldn't have been discharged, and that I needed a lot of help with certain situations, whereas the person assessing me figured that I was all right. So there was miscommunication with that, and it was really difficult to get back into it because he had discharged me without talking to the rest of the team. So yeah, I'd say, but overall, I'd say it was pretty positive. I'd say that they did help me in some aspects, like finding community, getting back into the community, helping with finding psychiatrists, stuff like that, and just being there for me whilst they found adult services therapists or something like that. So I'd say overall it was pretty helpful.
Thank you, Melia, for sharing your story. So, transitioning is supposed to be smooth. Why the difficulty?
Beautiful.
Mustafa, would you like to answer?
No, let's get some
Kathy.
insight from the professionals.
Let's get some insight from one of the professionals.
Yeah, beautiful.
Exactly.
So one of the questions we always get, or the conundrum that we're in, is why is the transition from CAMS into adult mental health not smooth? And there are various reasons for this, and I'll highlight a few. So I think the first big one is we're finding that, transition conversations are not being held soon enough with young people. And so families and service users, they're not aware of what to expect. They don't know what transitioning feels like. And so when this transitioning happens then at like 17 and a half, or even just a few weeks to 18, they're almost just thrown off this cliff into the abyss of adult mental health services. So that can be really jarring and leaves lots of young people feeling anxious, families anxious, which creates a lot of stress systemically. The other big thing is that we all know the CAM service and the adult mental health service function really differently. So in CAMS, young people often have a lot of care, they have a lot of people around them, they have a lot of clinicians checking in on them often, and they're given that, personalized care in CAMS, whereas in adult mental health services, you'll find that there's an expectation of some independence. They want young people or adults to be able to manage themselves a lot more. There's also the issue around consent. So we know that lots of young people during their journey in CAMS, parents would have had a lot of authority around making decisions on behalf of their young people. So there's lots of people involved in those decisions. Whereas in adult mental health services, the ethics and the clinical governance around how we manage information is very strict. And so even though you turn 18, suddenly there's this dilemma around how much information can clinicians share with young people's families and parents. And so that can create some challenges. So here you have an 18-year-old who's not been making decisions entirely on their own through CAMS, and then suddenly coming to adult mental health and you have to make decisions on your own. So that also can be quite stressful or anxiety provoking. One of the other things that I think makes the transition into adult mental health services quite stressful is that lots of young people don't know what to expect in adult mental health. So adult mental health can feel like this web of different types of support. There's lots of different information. There's so much that goes on in there. And so it can be really confusing to what to expect, what help am I going to get, who's going to be my clinician, who can I ask questions from, that sort of thing. And then let's not forget that it's not just transitioning from between services. These young people are transitioning into adulthood. So they're going through this developmental transition. So think of when you're 16, 17, 18, the things you're thinking about: your career, you're thinking about friends, romance, you're thinking about your identity, who am I, building the sense of self. And so you have all of that happening, and the fact that young people, from a neurological perspective, they're developing their decision-making skills, they're learning how to regulate emotions, and they're learning how to really they're starting to think more adult-like. And so couple that with then mental health needs and having to transition from a CAM service into an adult service, it can be really overwhelming.
Thank you, Doctor.
Wow, that was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, so we all agree that CAMS needs to change, but what is it that needs to change?
I feel like there should be a clear understanding for that individual who's going from the CAM service to the adult services. What exactly are they going to expect? Because at times I feel like you're just in and then out, and you haven't gotten any information about what exactly am I here for and what support am I actually going to get.
I
Great.
feel like we also need better communication between the multiple people who are working on your care, maybe including you within that care.
I think professionals need to be more trained when it comes to the transition process and dealing with the young people that are turning 18 in order to not make the situation as stressful as it is.
Now we're going to go to our professional for advice for young people and their families about the transitional process.
So ideally, a process of a young person transitioning from CAMS to AMS is that the conversation starts from as early as 16 to 17 and a half. So we're notified by CAMS that we have a young person who has some severe mental health challenges and some complex mental health needs, and they might need support from adult mental health services. So we as a transitions team would meet up with clinicians. So firstly, we encourage CAMS clinicians to have this conversation with young people and parents. And big thing is we always want consent from young people for CAMS clinicians to have conversations with transitions team. We then meet up with the CAMS clinicians. We might talk about the needs of the young person. We talk a little bit about their story, their history. We get to know the young person. We also want to hear the voice of the young person coming through that. And then we try and develop some form of a transition plan. The CAMS clinician then is encouraged to take that back to the young person, where they can co-produce that transition plan. And if there's consent from the young person, what that means is that as clinicians or professionals, we then take this back into the adult mental health services teams, and we think about the young person and their needs, and we think about the different pathways or different interventions that are available to help this young person as they're transitioning into adult mental health services. And if they meet the threshold, they're then accepted. And then we try and have an overlap of care between transitions and CAMS. And the reason for this is because we really want to embody trauma-informed working, right? That's the North London way. And so we try and connect with the young person through their CAMS clinician. We get to know the young person, and that's when we start to develop that trusted relationship with now an adult worker in adult mental health services. So by the time the young person turns 18 and they do require adult mental health services, they have this relationship with a peer worker, community engagement worker, or someone in the transitions team who then notifies them or keeps them updated of this is what care is going to look like now when you turn 18. And we sort of open them up to that information. We talk about things, and during all of that, we're also trying to help young people learn more about themselves. Also, help them to connect to support in the community. Maybe connect them to help with their college or uni. And so we really try and create a holistic transition service for them as they're transitioning into adult mental health.
Thank you all for tuning in. I also appreciate you guys for coming here today. And we hope to see you next time on our podcast. This is us signing out.
Bye. Ew, don't put that in, please.